So, what exactly is case interview and why are consulting companies so obsessed with them? Hello, this is Zenji. Welcome back to my channel. For those who don't know me, I was a McKinsey consultant from 2016 to 2019 out of the Chicago office. I was also a trained McKinsey interviewer and have interviewed over 50 candidates over my career there. And today, I want to talk about case interview. Now, thinking back of the summer before I started recruiting for consulting, I kept hearing this phrase, case interview. And at the time, I was actually confused and scared about case interview because I have no idea what it meant, why is it different, how to prep for it. It seems to be the hype that everybody talks about, except I seem to be the only one who had no idea what it is or how to prep for it. So I want to help you to avoid being in my situation, and that's why in today's video, we're going to do a little case interview 101. And I'll cover what exactly is a case interview, why are they so popular, what are the typical formats, how can you possibly stand out from your peers, and finally, all the misconceptions about case interview prep. Now let's get started. So let's start with the basics. What exactly is a case interview? So a case interview in its core, it is a problem-solving interview that simulates real-life challenges that consultants face on a daily basis. It is gaining a lot of popularity as I've seen case interviews not only in consulting interviews but also in a lot of tech or startup interviews, because it is such a great way to assess multiple skills from your problem solving to communication to analytical and critical thinking. So typically you'll be given a prompt that tells you about the context of the situation that you're trying to solve, and then you'll be given a problem statement, which is exactly what you need to solve. And then during the interview, the interviewer will also supplement with data or graphs to help you analyze the problem. And then eventually you will be asked to provide a recommendation. So let's talk about an example. Since the start of the pandemic in 2020, ride-sharing companies have been hit very severely. Lyft is one of the examples where it has suffered a lot in its ride-sharing business, and it has seen a decline in its revenue over the past couple of years. So if you're the consultant being staffed on the project, how would you help Lyft turn their business around? Typically, you can expect a few categories of problems that you will need to solve. First, and in my opinion, one of the most popular and probably also one of the easiest one is profitability. So the example of Lyft that I've given you is a profitability problem where you have to analyze either the revenue or the cost or a combination of both. The second category, and by the way, the remaining are not in any sort of popularity order. I have no idea. I don't have the stats to rank them. But the second one, for example, is market entry, where you have to help a company decide whether to enter a new country, new geography, or whether to enter a new business segment. So an example of here is, maybe would it make sense for Google to enter the food delivery market? And then typically with this type of problem, market sizing is also a component of it, where you would have to assess how big the overall market or addressable market is. For example, how many likes will Angie get in this video? Third category, mergers and acquisition, which, as you may have guessed, it is about whether it's worth for companies to acquire or merge or start completely from scratch if they want to get into a new business or if they wanted to compete with their competitors. So an example here, again, completely made up is, one of my dreams is to open a bubble tea cafe. If I were to do that, should I start from scratch or should I acquire an existing cafe? Next is pricing, how to price certain items. I mean, you see them almost everywhere. It's also a very common business problem. So an example would be that, how would SpaceX, for example, price its future ride to outer space program? So after giving the prompt and the problem statement, you'll be expected to lay out the structure or the framework in terms of how you would go about and solve the problem. And then you will either ask for additional information or the interviewer will give you additional information. You will use analysis, either qualitative or quantitative, to draw insights and eventually link all the information together to give a recommendation. Typically, I would expect case interview to run from 20 to 25 minutes. Sometimes it could run a little longer. It really all depends. Why do companies, especially consulting companies or tech companies in that case, love case interviews so much? As I mentioned before, case interviews, they do assess multiple skills at the same time. So in this link on Bank's website, it will actually give you a really good idea in terms of what exactly they're looking for from a case interview. So it will be the approach that you take to solve a problem, the analytical and creative thinking, the usage of data to quantify and make recommendations, communication skills when conveying your ideas, and your suggestion around how to implement those proposals. And those I would probably say would be the 5 dimensions where they consider are the core or the more intrinsic consulting skills that the companies really care about. Although, in my opinion, the word intrinsic is really interesting because you can definitely improve all of those dimensions if you're able to do targeted practice, and then you can pretty much train your intrinsic. All right, next up, how are those interviews run? What are the formats? I want to say that the most popular, obviously there are more different formats, but the 2 most popular ones are the interviewer-led and the candidate-led. Let's talk about the interviewer-led first. I think that's the famous McKinsey style of case interview. I don't know why they decided to do this. Maybe they want to stand out, but in my opinion, interviewer-led, it is more straightforward and it's easier. Typically, in an interviewer-led type of case, the interviewer would lead the case, which means that after you present your framework, which is essentially how you structure the case, the interviewer will tell you exactly the area or the aspect that he or she wants to go dive deep into. So you don't really have to ask all these questions and trying to eliminate or prioritize. To me, I think that really takes a lot of pressure off. For example, in this case, what you would typically hear from the interviewer would be that, let's dive into area X. In a candidate-led example, as you may have guessed, is the opposite, where you will be the one driving the flow and the direction of the case. So in this type of interview, you will be the one who decides which area you want to dive deep into. So what you would typically do is that after you present your framework, you will say that, hey, based on XYZ reason, let's maybe dive into area X first. What do you, the interviewer, think? And then the interviewer will either provide more information to help you to do deeper level analysis, or he or she might say that, hey, I don't think this area is very important, let's skip it for now. What's another area that you would look into? So I get a lot of questions of people wondering, if it's the same case and pretty much everybody can do the same prep, memorizing pretty much the same framework, and then you will probably draw the same conclusions. How would you stand out from your peers? Because this is only an introductory video, so I won't dive too deep into all the detailed tips and tricks that you can do that, but I want to say that there are a few things that you should definitely watch out for as you start the prepping process. First of all, process is much more important than the results. Yes, you're right, in a typical, very simple, straightforward case such as profitability, it's probably true that candidates will probably draw very similar conclusions. So however, in this case, right, consulting company, how would they evaluate your skills? It'll be more from the process of how you get to the conclusion than the conclusion yourself, which means that in that process, right, your structure, your framework will be way more important, because their belief is that if you have the right structure, then you can always solve the problem versus solve it based on pure luck, and that's something that they want to eliminate. And since I mentioned framework, the second point is, what does it mean to actually have a good framework? It needs to be MISI and it needs to be customized. Those are extremely important. So MISI means mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive. In human words, that means that your framework should be comprehensive, where it covers pretty much all the areas that you can think of, without all the individual branches overlapping each other. For example, in a profitability case, when you wanted to dive into, you wouldn't say revenue and price, because revenue is a function of price. That pretty much means that your 2 branches are actually overlapping each other. And it is also not exhaustive, because revenue and cost are essentially the two branches for profitability, and you have to include both. Second, customization. What does customization mean? It means contextualize your answer and your framework to the specific problems that you encounter. I know that over the internet, there's a lot of different frameworks that people would tell you to memorize to handle different types of cases. But remember, in the real consulting project in the business world, no two problems or challenges will be exactly the same. That's why during a consulting interview, the interviewers would really, really hate if you're just trying to use a memorized framework and you're trying to force fit it in into the current problem that you're solving for. So definitely remember to always contextualize, to always customize, to really draw, what the conclusion means to the specific industry, but not in the general terms. And at the end of the day, please, 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 please do not memorize framework. And if you're interested in learning how you can customize framework, check out one of my previous videos. And then last but not least point here, always using a hypothesis-driven approach. Hypothesis-driven approach is extremely important, not just in case interviews, but in McKinsey. I don't know about other company, but especially McKinsey ways of working. We always say, we always state what our hypothesis is, and then what are the different data points that we need to either validate or disapprove the hypothesis. So if you can use the same structure during the interview, it would definitely help you stand out. All right, last area, all the misconceptions. I made a lot of mistakes actually during my case interview prep, and I would want to save some time for you if you're doing the same. So a lot of people would ask me, how many case interviews would I need to do in order to really improve significantly? Is it 50, 100, 200? What is the magic number? I really hate to break it to you. It is not a numbers game. There is no magic number. And as much as you would like to believe, it's actually more about quality than the quantity. With each case interview, don't just practice and just let go and forget about it. Practice, try to see, after the interview, what are the areas that you could have done better. Run the same interview again and then absorb and apply all the learnings that you had to make it a better case. So you can always make sure that the next case you do, you will always keep improving. And also, please stay away from those people who flaunt around and are so proud that they have done 100 or 150 or 200. There's really nothing to be worried about. And for those who does, please stop doing that to others to add pressure to people. For some people, they just need maybe 5 or 10. For some people, maybe they need a lot more. But also, yeah, I think 200 cases are also very excessive. Next, how many frameworks do I have to memorize? Again, no magic number, and also please do not memorizing frameworks. You can go back to my video where I talk about the reason for not memorizing frameworks. Please don't do it. If you do it, the interviewers will recognize right away, and I will guarantee you that you will not make to the next round. Last point here, listen to your interviewer, please. I feel like a lot of people have this mindset that, the interviewers are here to trick me. They want to ask all the tough questions and really test my ability to perform under pressure. No. During the case interview, typically what happens is that the interviewer is just really there to help you solve the case together. So whenever they realize that you are potentially making a mistake or going down the wrong direction, it's actually their job, and they will give you tips to actually try to pull you back into the right direction. So please just don't get into this mental mindset that I need to solve this all by myself. Listen to what they're saying, listen to their suggestions, and you will probably come out okay. If you like this video and want to learn more about, other tricks of improving your case interview, please check out this video where I talked about how I was actually to use this one specific skill and improve my case interview success rate by over 90%. All right, good luck. See you next time. Bye.